this is to continue on with Frostmar for just the first part, and then the second part will go into more on the Titan Islands and the rest of the world. How do you go about doing things? Well, talk to the 12 adventurers that are NPCs. Talk to your fellow adventurers, see what they've seen. This is gritty. This is hard. It's going to be tough to survive, and it's going to be tough to get things done. We're going to do random monsters every hour of travel, so that's generally about 3 miles or so. We're moving at a normal pace. Roll a 1d6. On a 6, random encounter happens. Now, most of my random encounters are going to be for combat, whereas in my narrative games, I like random encounters to be many things, but because you're in a wasteland, they're going to be mostly combat. The social pillar here is lacking a little bit compared to most things because it's just one building, the hall, and then a few huts, like 3 or 4 huts for the private living servants that work at the hall. So there's almost nobody to talk to, but that's not meaning that you can't talk to people. Again, you've got those 12 adventurers, you've got the cook, you've got the maitre d', you've got the 4 servants of the Ultimate Clan, and you can write letters to the other parts of the world. Really, creativity is king. If you can give me a good reason why it can happen, I'm going to let it happen. I like to see you guys write scenes and come up with interesting things. I love to see that. You will be doing a lot of traveling. The 8 cardinal directions: north, south, east, west, northeast, southwest, that kind of thing. I'll describe it as you move a mile north, you move a mile northeast, you move another mile east, you move a mile north, and you can plot that in a graph, north, northeast, east, north, northeast, diagonals, left, rights, and such. It might behoove you to write down a map, either on a piece of paper or in the Roll20, there's a function to write. Maybe do it that way. It's going to be important because this is uncharted territory. 35 years ago, this plague swept through, and people don't live here as much anymore. And that's just part of it. If adventuring team A tells adventuring team B, hey, we traveled, generally somewhere to the east or the west, more likely. You're literally marching west. We marched west for a few hours. I don't really know where, just somewhere in that direction. That could put you miles off course. And, then the survival checks come in hand. Well, rolling survival in a snowy terrain is usually a 5 if you're trying to track somebody down. You can see their footprints in the snow. But if you're looking for a path, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, especially if they haven't done anything to mark the path. Like a DC 20, if you're just trying to, we've got no information, we don't really know where we're going, just know it's this way. So DC 20 for a check like that. A DC 15 would be like, well, we know they headed west, we know at some point they took a turn, there might be a landmark that they jotted down. It might be a DC 15. Now, if the other group made some notes or they had something going on, maybe one of them has proficiency in calligrapher's tools, then with that information you can DC 10. And if they made efforts to create a road or make markings or do something, which is going to be a great cost to them because it's going to take time to do that, and that's more rolls on the random encounter table, things like that. Might be worth their time though, but it could help you in the long run. I'm thinking that, and I'm not really used to West Marches, so this could change. It could take a long time before you're traveling more than a day or 2 away from the hall. I like the idea of points of light. You travel, if you're traveling more than 4 hours away from the hall, if you travel 5 hours west, let's say, and you're not really sure where to go, you don't have a place to stay. If you're staying out overnight here in Lokeren, that's a bad thing to do. So normally we go every hour is a D6 roll if you're traveling. You're out in the open, monsters can find you. Now, with this week-long rest, I want it to be possible for you to get that out in the wilderness. So it would be 2 rolls a day because you're not moving around, you're trying to stay hidden, you're trying to rest, you're trying to relax. So you roll a D6 for the daytime, you roll a D6 for the nighttime. Now, odds are you're not going to get a whole week with that, but you might get just short rest, which can help you get to wherever it is you need to go. And sometimes if you head out 5 hours west and you need to make it back east, back to the hall, Well, you're going to have an hour or 2 hours that you have to march under penalty of exhaustion because you didn't find a place to get a long rest. So you really need to find a point of light out there, someplace that's a day travel away. Maybe it's exactly 8 hours away. Maybe it's 7 hours away. Maybe it's only 3 or 4 hours away. But if it's a small little community, like less than 50 people or whatever, some teepees, maybe some wooden structures, it's probably not going to be a point of light. You're probably going to have a 1d6 a day rather than 1d6 day and night. Just and something happens, and maybe you won't get into a fight. Maybe they can handle whatever the threat is. Maybe they've been dealing with it. Maybe it's just a tribute. Maybe you can use your social interaction for that. So maybe you travel 4, 5, 6 hours west. You don't find a safe place, the ruins of a town, which aren't really ruins. They were abandoned, and now something's living there. So maybe you want to do a long rest there. And a d6 a day, it's pretty doable. There's a good chance you're not going to roll a d6 for most of those days. You might roll 1d6, and whether it's a combat encounter, it could be a small one that they can handle, or it could be a social encounter. Maybe something is coming to bargain. Maybe it's a cultist or something, and you use your cunning to get around it, whatever the case may be. But I really like the idea of it's player driven. You guys need to put something in your backstory that you're searching out here. If somebody's a nobleman and this is one of the players, one of them's a nobleman and they've got connections in other parts of the world, and their connection sent them here saying, if you're looking to restore your name, looking to restore riches, this entire continent was living and breathing 35 years ago, and now it's desecrated. It's diseased. There's a lot of stuff out there. Maybe you can find gold, riches, gems, anything like that, but you have to look. And maybe there's something out here that this noble is looking for in particular. Another character has a person they're looking for, and their only lead is here. They don't know anything else. They'll find something out because they're looking, and just follow the breadcrumbs. Survive, be witty, be creative. Just be creative, have fun, be interesting. I'll allow whatever I can, I'm hoping to have fun with all this. And as far as the rest of Ath, we'll say about 7:45. That's where we're at right now. We're going to talk a little bit about the Titan Islands. Now, the history of this world, we'll just start from the beginning. About 1,000 years ago, that's whenever the oldest living humanoid races are, elves. About 1,000 years ago is how long their memory is. And it's dominated by the 5. Those are the gods, Urkala, Deshingia, Pasnif, Konzaktos, and Dionysus. Those are the 5 gods. And Konzaktos and Urkala are the 2 that are at the forefront. The other 3 are seen as weaker and not as important. They don't have quite the large temples that those 2 do. And it's just the 5 are seen as taking the people and rescuing them. The people know that there are things out there older than 1,000 years old, but the memories are hazy. You can adventure out in places like the Titan Islands, and whenever you go off the main roads, that's when things get dangerous. Those roads are there for a reason. Those roads are protected, but you travel an hour or 2 off the roads, your life's in danger. Travel a couple days into the wilderness, you'll find ruins that are thousands of years old that predate the longest recorded history, and what's out there could surprise you. Now, this isn't necessarily for the Frostmar server we have going on, but just some other general details about the land. There are 4 continents in general. There's Ishera, the Free Cities Alliance, which is a string of 4 islands close together. There's Vakran, the diseased continent, and then there's Titan Islands, easily the most well-to-do continent. There is massive amounts of farmland, plenty of people to protect them, and just rather been lucky. And I have another game that runs on Friday nights that have been going for quite a while that takes place in the Titan Islands, and that's all about 27 years ago when this giant of a man named Titaros the Conqueror got that moniker by, it's actually called an epithet, I believe, by conquering the Titan Islands. He came from one of the Free Cities Alliance islands. The 4 islands are Hark, Cape Refuge, Blue Atoll, and I'm drawing a blank on the last one. Feralst. Feralst is the fourth one. I don't have my notes in front of me. I just have been creating this for a very long time. Tyderos was from Hark. The legend is he was a galley slave. Looked normal, a normal human man, and he was imbued by the touch of a god. The god sought him out for his inner strength and his inner dedication to unlocking his potential. And then he grew physically. I think he's 10 feet tall, maybe 9.5 feet tall. He's definitely a large-sized, rules-wise, a large size rather than medium-sized person. But he looks human. He doesn't look like a giant. He doesn't look like a giant kin. Everything about him is human except his large size. And he says he is a titan. He says he is a divine creation, and his goal is to join the stars, to join the cosmos. Now, the cosmology is a little bit different with here because we've got the five, the Church of the Five, rather than, Ao being the overgod and gods like Tyr and Helm and things like that. But I would think it would be safe to say that Mount Celestia is probably was King Tyderos, because he was a king at one point, was King Tyderos' goal was to join Mount Celestia again. And as far as anybody knew, he was going to accomplish that. He was about 30 years old whenever he came over to Pentapelago and took it from Narek Arter. Narek Arter was the halfling who kind of ruled over the entire island, or the entire continent. The continent at that time had 4 major cities, Kana, Kaiport, Batanaport, and the 4th city has now been named Titusburg after the Titan. The capital city did have a different name before then. So those 4 main cities. And Narek Arter was at the capital, but they were a loose alliance. Each city was its own kingdom. Kaiport had a king, Kana had a king, Batanaport had a king, and their governments were a little bit different. They might not have been kings, but something to that effect. They were not united, but when Tyderos came, he united them, and I based this sort of off of, a mix between Xerxes and Genghis Khan. How can you combine those two things, you say? Well, he is a bit rough and brutal like Genghis Khan was, but his system of governance was more like Xerxes. He has, I'm trying to blank on that too, where you have a satrap. You had satraps in that land. Satrap is like a king, but you answer to an emperor. So King Tyderos was more of an emperor. And the satrap of Kaiport, and the satrap of Kana, and the satrap of Batanaport all united under King Tyderos. And the entire lands has taxes, and the roads are patrolled. King Tyderos does something, I believe, called the Titan's Pilgrimage. When a little boy or little girl comes of age, when they become a man or they become a woman, regardless, they do a year mandatory in the Royal Guard. Now, they don't patrol with the Royal Guard. They don't train like the Royal Guard does. It's more of like a Boy Scouts. They do Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts for a year. They travel the entire continent. They learn of each different peoples. They visit each city. They spend some time in the smaller towns near the cities. They get to know the people. They get to love their continent. At least that's the idea. And just bring them all together. You meet your mate here on the Titan's Pilgrimage generally. And sometimes kids will travel with the kids, or maybe young store owners or young craftsmen will run away with somebody that's in their pilgrimage. And you just get a lot of interbreeding and matchmaking, which helps tie the continent together. Tyderos definitely did that on purpose. Now, it was not his idea. Tyderos wasn't necessarily the brains of the operation, but he did have 3 advisors who were part of. Well, let's back up a little bit. Tyderos came from Hark, right? Well, he was a big guy, and he was all about this power, and he's going to join the stars. Well, why was he contacted by the people of Pentapelago, now called the Titan Islands? He was in charge of a a fierce band of warriors. They were mercenaries. They were pirates at some point, depending on who you called them. They're on the land as well. Hark is a harsh place, and that contributes to the naming convention of to hark. People from other places can say that and just feel that guttural sense of dread in there. And whenever he came over, he brought many of those warriors with him. His three most trusted were Hath Mosrun, Balthazar, and Sylvie Itzen. Now, this was all 27 years ago, and it's believed that Balthazar was the man behind the Titan's pilgrimage. Balthazar was he was vicious, just as the Titan was, but he was also the brains, more so than the other two. The other two had very important jobs that they did. Sylvie, in fact, was responsible for bringing about a resurgence in the worship of power, the Church of Power, this thing that Tyderos the person has believed in and has kind of worshipped for a long time. Sylvie turned it into a religion, and she used the large Church of the Five that was located in the capital, now called Titusburg, and turned it into a church of power. And that was her major contribution. She has a large statue in her honor in Titusburg. Sylvie has since died to pneumonia or some other natural illness. She was a human. She didn't live very long. She died less than 10 years ago, so 17 years into the Titan's reign at least, and 17 years as a well-paid advisor. And her statues there commemorating her power. She could fly. She brought down lightning and thunder from the heavens, raining down on her enemies. It was unheard of, and it was all from power. When a cleric draws their power from a source, it's usually a divine source, but she said that her power was from power. And Hath Mosrun, his name, it's a bit meta that you know his name. He was very behind the scenes. He was more of a spy. He was more of the person that could go in and get things done. He was very good at observing things and keeping to the shadows and striking his opponents, but looking not intimidating at all. And was just very good at blending in. And he did a lot of the research into many of the things that Balthazar and Tyderos got up to. The first person in before the army went in, kind of thing. And he has since passed ever since the beginning of the Civil War between those who worship power and those who don't. Didn't exactly turn out to be those who worship power and those who don't. That's not exactly what the Civil War is about. A lot of it has to do with the introduction of the vile races from the Eastern Badlands, the orcs, the goblins, the gnolls, and just integrating them into the society of the normal humanoids, the elves, the dwarves, halflings, and humans. And there's a lot of pushback from that. So there's a lot of fantasy racism embroiled in it. There's the difference in the religions. There's the difference that some people see the Titan as this force of tyranny. Now we need to back up a little bit more. The Civil War was started by Titus, who is the son of Tyderos. Now Titus is also a large size, creature. He's either 9 or 11 feet tall, something around that. He was 3 years old whenever his father Tyderos was conquering the Pentapelago. And I know we've gone, crisscross backwards. It's fine. This is already a long video. I'm sure nobody's watching. But if you are that interested about the lore, just let me know. I'll make some more videos about the lore of this world if it really matters to any of you. But again, this is all off the top of my head. I've been working on this for a very long time. And I appreciate anybody that engages with it. Thank you so much.